All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting on today, the June 15th, with Jennifer Hoff, Committee Chair, and Bob Kaufman, myself, Business Administrator. Our agenda for the evening is to go over the current 22-23 financial status, some budgetary highlights, the proposed revenues, proposed expenditures, school budgets, department budgets, and the current budget gap. Here's a table of the current expenditures. The item that might stick out different from last month is this 4,600 existing building improvement services. It's only 36,000 right now, but that is where expenditures need to be charged in order for us to get our ESSER reimbursement for the HVAC projects. So you will see even when we have June's final numbers, that number will be even larger. But again, there's a matching revenue for that in grant funding.
Mr. Kaufman, were the advisory council invited to this meeting?
They were not. This is so I believe May and June were budget and finance, and April and March were budget advisory committee meetings.
Got it. Thank you so much.
In the future, though, we can make sure that they receive an invite and reminder.
Thank you so much.
For revenues, still getting slight upticks in the local tax revenue. Even more delinquent tax revenue came in. We've almost reached our mark, and that's only through April's deposits, I believe. So we still need May and June to come in after year end, and it gets recorded back as a receivable. Basic education funding, we should have another payment come in June. And then benefits reimbursement will come in after the quarter end.
Great. So 6,100 and the 6,400 will probably have more revenue added to it before we close out this year. Is that what you're saying?
And then in addition, 6,500 as well, although minimal.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then we should see more revenue in 8,500 as well. Okay, are there any questions related to the current revenues and expenditures as of June 13th?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. All right, again, I linked in the budget Q&A for anybody that is reviewing the slides live, so that they have the opportunity to review any questions that were brought up, as well as the administration's answers to those questions. I don't believe we need to go over it, as we did not add any additional questions since last month, but it is a live link, so you can view it at your leisure. It's also posted on the website. The budget gap is made up by total revenues less total expenditures. Any excess expenditures from revenues creates our budget gap. And for 2023-2024 budget, our proposed revenues are made up of local, state, and federal revenues. Our proposed local revenues, they have not changed since May's meeting. And that is the local tax revenue given no tax increase. The proposed state revenues also have not been adjusted since our last meeting. We have not received a final budget from the state, so we're still maintaining the same initial governor budget level for now. As soon as we get more information, we will adjust that number, hopefully prior to our June 26th board meeting.
Yeah, if I just may add a little, they are working on the budget. So far, the House has, passed, a budget with a little bit more money. But again, Mr. Kaufman is very hopeful, and as am I, that we'll get a real number to work with, before our budget season ends. If you're unfamiliar, we are mandated to pass a budget with or without our legislators telling us our number. So super uncomfortable, but we proceed ahead.
So
Yeah.
how is the level? We haven't received for the level up, right? Is that gonna be part of the basic education funded or level up? Level up will be on its own.
Yeah.
A number on its own.
So as it stands right now, it is a part of the basic education funding. There in the House plan, it comes back out and is added to quite significantly. And does not, it comes out of the BEF. But as of it stands right now, it is in the BEF. So it will not solely benefit the 100 school districts that it was supposed to or designed to. It will benefit all the school districts.
That sucks. So, I mean, they just took it, they just took it out. I mean, to the basic education funding. Oh, gosh. Oh, well.
So I guess my question is this: if we have to pass a budget and any subsequent increase in millage before the state allocates their money, once the state does allocate their money, if level up and any other income streams are more than we expected, that surplus money, is that going to go into capital, or is that going to go into anything that we might have trimmed back? Obviously, we can't change the tax rate once we pass it, so.
All right.
So go ahead, Jennifer.
My answer is that'll be a decision at that time. Right, when we see what that number looks like, but most likely it'll go into capital.
All right, I mean, you know how I feel about capital reserves, so that was the basis of my question.
Oh, so I would see it going in, yeah, it could go into fund balance, which is what you're saying. I was saying it would go towards our building projects, capital expenditures, but we'll see at that time. That'll be a good problem to have. A
Yes.
devastating problem will be if it's less than they told us it was.
Yes, that's correct. And as the board, you reserve the right to designate funds if we get an increase for said purposes, and that kind of will help also restrict the funds to whatever you would like. Obviously, that is up to a board vote, but that's also another option. But like we said, if we get more, that'd be great. It's a great problem to have, but as of right now, we don't know.
But isn't that what happened last year? Didn't they go into the fund balance?
It did. It did.
All right. Are there any other additional questions before I move on to the next slide?
No, do attendees have any questions? All right, proceed ahead.
Okay. Federal revenues, these are pretty much the same as last month as well. We did receive Title II and Title IV for last month's meeting, so those have been adjusted. However, we still have not received our number for Title I and Title III. So they have remained the same as last month's meeting. We may get an increase, but again, those increases require you to have matching expenditures. So the total proposed revenue budget would be $115,952,119. Again, given a zero tax increase. Moving on to the proposed expenditures for 23, 24. The major budget items were the healthcare projection being a 3% reduction. Prescription costs increasing about 13%. The PESER's retirement rate decreased about 3.57%. And then other items to consider are salary step corrections and contractual salary increases, as well as charter school increases.
Doug, can you go back to that last slide, please, Bob?
Sure.
So I guess my question is, so the healthcare projection is 3% reduction. I know that we get that through the DCIU, correct?
Correct.
The prescription cost projection of roughly 13 increase, is that prescription plan also go through the DCIU?
Yes, it is. So the Delaware Delaware County Healthcare Trust.
Okay. And they
Both
notified you in
plans-
writing of that increase?
I'm sorry.
They notified you in writing of that projected increase?
Yes, we have emails. We had projected emails and final emails, and those were the final rates.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Kaufman, the healthcare consortium, at some point we were supposed to get money back or like something to that effect.
Sure. So to explain in more detail, the Healthcare Trust essentially projects how much money you're going to spend next year and requires you to have an 8-month reserve. So if you are over that 8-month reserve, they reduce your premium rates, which is what happened this year. So that's why we had a 3% reduction in our premium rates this year.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Mhm. Are there any other questions?
On the charter scope, excuse me, what constitutes a $2 million increase? Is that due to more schools or what's going on with that?
It's due to a slight increase in enrollment, but also the as we increase our budget, the cost for a per student increases as well. So each year, as we spend more money to keep up with our building costs and things like that, that ends up getting allocated to kids that aren't attending our schools. If it's done in a non-capital fund. So if it's paid through general fund. So like all the building maintenance and things like that, that's kind of ramped up in the past couple of years. A lot of those costs get divided per student, and then that per student allocation is charged per student that attends a charter school.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this slide? Okay, seeing none. Okay. Now to the school budget expenditures. These tables are the same as last month's meeting as well. They use directed enrollment to allocate dollars to each building to be used by the principals. It's $140 per student. And then there's an additional $15 for each student enrolled in a special program, as well as an additional $15 allocated for each student who's enrolled in an ELL program. So a student that is in special programs and ELL program, they are allocated, or $170 is allocated to that building. Here is the projected position changes. The net position change is 36. That cost put at 3.7 million. And the assignment per school, if you click into the school budget methodology, you will see how we came up with our required numbers, as well as some additional academic interventionists to help get our students to the places they need. Last year, we utilized 8 interventionists in the ELA using ESSER funds, and we saw dramatic changes in testing. So this year, we're requesting to move those 8 over to operating, as well as an additional 8 interventionists with a focus on mathematics. Anybody have any questions on the school budgets before I move on?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, great. For department budgets, the summaries are here with a total difference for all departments of about 1.5 million. A lot of the items were discussed in previous months, so we're just going over summary here. The total expenditure summary for instructional, it's about 76 million, for support service about 35 million, non-instructional services about 1.6 million, and debt service about 5.7 million. That brings us to a total expenditure amount of $118,774,399. These are the categories that they're broken out into in more detail. As you can see, between instructional regular programs and special education programs, we have a $9.1 million increase. And then for total support services, about a $2.1 million increase. For non-instructional services, about a $46,000 increase. So non-instructional is essentially student activities and community service. And then our debt service is projected to increase by about 792,000, and that is in relation to the facilities master plan. So that brings us to our proposed budget gap. If you remember on slide 7 or slide 14, excuse me, we had total revenues projected at 115,952,119, and total expenditures at 118,774,399. So that brings us to a budget gap of about 2.8 million. LinkedIn is a tool that we used to cut down expenditures of what we thought we needed, and made sure we kept the things that we kept the things we needed, and kind of try to cut down on things that we wanted. And that budget gap is composed of about 792,000 in debt service for the facilities master plan and 2 million in operating. Are there any questions on the information between the budget gap and the total expenditures?
No, Mr. Kaufman, exactly what that $2 million is paying for is in the FAQs as a list, correct?
It's in the there's questions about it, but this $2.8 million, if you click on the link of budget gap,
Got it.
that 2.8 million are these items down here.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Are there any other additional questions?
Attendees, any questions? All right, proceed ahead.
Okay. To fill that budget gap, we have a millage recommendation for 23-24 of 30.72 mils, which is a 1.77 mil increase from 22-23. And the chart below shows you the breakdown between the facilities master plan and operations. So far with this proposal, we'd be up to 0.8 mils increase in total in the last 2 years, directly correlated to the facilities master plan. And for this year, a 1.28 increase in operations. So that'll go down to our total of 1.77. And over here is your property assessed values. The average property, or I guess, no, I think it's average, is 125,000 between the district properties, which would constitute a $221 increase. But we would also like to note that this year's homestead reduction for 23-24 is $571. So if you applied for homestead reduction this year, you would actually still see a decrease of about $350. Any questions on this slide?
Anyone?
Okay, I think my next slide is future meetings. The next meeting related to the budget is the board business meeting for the adoption of the final budget on June 26th at 6:30 p.m. Like we said previously, the board must adopt a budget by June 30th, regardless of whether or not the state has finalized their budget. However, if we get a finalized budget prior to that date, we will make any adjustments to the budget to reflect that information. So my next slide is a thank you. So I don't know if anybody has any discussion for the whole presentation or.
Any questions, school board directors?
We have committee of the whole next week, correct?
Yes, on Tuesday, the 20th.
Okay, so, we'll make a recommendation then?
So it will be on the agenda that we read, and then the vote will be at the June 26th meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is the number that we used in May also.
No, I agree. I just want to know ahead of time if there's any undercurrent.
Not that I know of, other than the
Thank
undercurrent of legislators being late. Do the attendees have any questions? All right, if anyone has any questions, feel free to email Mr. Kaufman. Check the FAQs, they're incredibly valuable. And I appreciate, while I don't like the information from a stomach standpoint, I do appreciate the transparency that is being brought forward very much. If hearing no questions, happy graduation to the class of 2023. And we'll see you all next Tuesday. Have a great night.